Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from today. Welcome to the lounge. We had a little bit of a summer hiatus and now coming back fully refreshed. I'm really pleased to have my guest to kick us back off as Jo Damato. She's a dear friend and has become a mentor to me over the years in the field of business aviation, as well as just in all things in life. Jo Damato is the Senior VP of Education, Training, and Workforce Development at the National Business Aviation Association. And today we're going to be diving into workplace caregiving, how it impacts the team, why everybody should have a coach, and I mean everybody, and how volunteering impacts your industry and your life. The short and dirty summary for Jo is she's an aviation pro, mom, wife, and runner, Phillies fan, and a wonderful human that everybody should get to know.
Oh.
Jo, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Wonderful human to wonderful human. This is something I've been looking forward to all summer, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely you were on the top of the list to get here in the lounge, and it's just an honor to have you here. I know your schedule is super packed, so we're going to dive straight in and talk about caregiving. You know, this is something that really has the power to change somebody's life, and it might be a very small action on the part of the person providing the care, but it can have really profound and lasting effects. And so I wanted to ask you, why was this one of the topics that you wanted to bring to the lounge today?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm just glad that we're all talking about it more. And so thank you for being one of the ones that wants to share the message of caregiving. It's certainly not my topic. This is something that all of us at some point in our lives may find ourselves in a caregiver role or be really close to somebody who's in that caregiver role. It does not matter if you're a parent, if you're a child, if you're a sibling, niece, nephew, cousin, next door neighbor, good friend, colleague, there's probably somebody that you care about. There's somebody who cares about you. And at any time in our lives, we're called to help accommodate that person in their time of need. And that's not the only thing that defines us during that time that we might be wearing a caregiving hat. And so what I'm glad we're able to talk about now is that aviation people are caregivers, that you can have a dynamic job. You can be a pilot, you can be a technician, you can be a scheduler, a dispatcher, a flight attendant, an FBO professional, name the job. And then you also have your life that is not your job. And in our outside of work lives, we're volunteers. We might be coaching a sports team or a Girl Scout troop. We may be active with our church or a school. There's so many ways we spend our time. Those extra hours none of us seem to have, but we find the time for anyway. And then the boring things like cleaning our houses and doing our laundry and emptying the dishwasher, and how do you fit all these things in? But the thing is, that's what makes up the whole person. And I think we can be kinder to each other. I think we can understand how somebody can excel as a professional, as their entire selves, and talk about what they bring to their lives every day. Here I am at work, but my phone may ring because my dad's hospice nurse might call. Here I am at work, but I might hear from one of my children because they want to share some great news with me. I have a collegiate aviator, might want to talk to me about an accomplishment. I have a high school senior. He might need to call me for permission to do something after school. I have a spouse. He may need to reach out to me. He's a legacy airline captain, and the times that we get to talk to each other or share something important about our lives doesn't follow a schedule. So I hear from a lot of NBA members. I hear from a lot of our mutual friends that caregiving is front and center in their lives and part of who they are and how they wake up every day. For caregivers, one of the first things that you think about when you open your eyes are all those people in your lives and what you're responsible for that day. And so that's why it's important to me. And I hope that that's resonating with anybody who's watching this or who is either thriving or struggling or managing as a caregiver. We see you, and we're probably just like you.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, it's something that, kind of has been this taboo topic for some reason in the workplace because it's a little touchy-feely. And, management and leadership has certainly evolved over the years. And aviation, especially business aviation, is very fast paced. Things change all the time. There's a lot of decision making that needs to happen in the moment, and we have to emotionally regulate after the fact. But for many years, there wasn't language for this, and there weren't tools for that either. And many of us, because we're caregivers or because we care so much about the work that we do, we tend to put our own needs of caregiving, after all of the other things that we have on our plate. And it's the
Right.
whole cliche, but you need to put your
Good
own
point.
on first, right? So
Yes.
what have you seen in your journey with caregiving and acknowledging that this is such a big part of who you are? How has that transformed how you show up in the workplace?
Well, I've been a aviation professional for over 25 years, nearly 30 years. I have been a mom for 20 years next month. So caregiving has been synonymous with my being an aviation professional, definitely for the last couple decades. But always in the sense of being a full-time working parent, not any different from all the other full-time working parents I know. But I've really gotten a chance to listen to our members who have talked to me about how caregiving shows up in their lives. And so this is
Mm,
something we've put a spotlight on at NBAA frequently, whether it's a podcast, an article, a session at a convention or at a conference, trying to just create some community around it so caregivers and aviation can connect with each other. So I was already passionate about helping, like, give them a voice and amplifying how caregiving shows up for all of us. What I hadn't expected was for my role as a full-time working parent to evolve into a full-time working child of two very ill parents, and
yes.
it really took me by surprise, as these things do. One day, everything was fine. A week later, both of my parents were seriously ill and in need of support. Way more than what you would expect,
Right.
and I tried to do it all. So, again, I wasn't looking to to have my own, intimate experience with this, but I found myself not only advocating for the caregivers in our industry, at the same time trying to figure out, how am I a mom to two children? How am I a good partner? Excelling at my job. One of our NBA core values is delivering excellence. It's very important to me. How am I as a neighbor and a friend, and then also as a daughter? And I just was not prepared for parenting my parents in
Mm,
the way that they have needed me the last, now almost 18 months. Um, for me, I reached a point where I realized I could not do all of those things, and something I had never considered doing outside of my two maternity leaves was taking advantage of the Family Medical Leave Act, which my employer, encouraged me to remember was a tool in the toolbox.
mm.
Nobody pushed me towards that decision. But I finally had a moment where I realized now is the time. It's not just for maternity leaves. It's for this very important, critical time in my life. And I don't think I'm self-selecting myself out of um, being essential at my employer. But I was afraid that I could find out that they could do just fine without me, even after, more than 20 years of my being on property. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, but it was a big scary thing to go from talking about and helping others amplify that message to having to kind of turn that on myself. Taking care of yourself is really important. That was the first step for me, was taking a step back from a few things, finding somebody to talk to. Dealing with, being in crisis with your parents is just, again, it sneaks up on you, and there are professionals out there who can help you reflect on that and process. And for me, you noted I'm a runner. For me, trying when I could to lose myself in exercise is great, and then also accepting all the times that I had to put that in the back burner, which was
Mm.
heartbreaking, because I know how good it is for me. So, yes, are we horrible at taking our own advice? Sometimes. Are we good at looking in the mirror and listening to the good advice people are trying to give us? Sometimes.
Yeah. They also often say that the things we talk about and the things we advocate for are often the medicine that we need the most.
Well said.
Yeah.
It's just harder sometimes to accept that you're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's really good to know that you have trusted people in your lives who are willing to have those harder conversations with you or show you a perspective that you are just, it's so right in front of you, you truly
Right.
can't see it. How could you be talking about me?
Right.
But I think it's helped me be a better leader, hopefully a better colleague. It's, I don't think, humanizing is the right word. I hope I'd already been humanized. But maybe I've been able to truly feel empathy in a different way, having experienced some of the things we have in the last year and a half, and certainly getting perspective and not feeling like everything is the most important thing on my task list. But there's true things that are very important and things that they can wait till the end of the day, or if I don't get them till tomorrow, that's okay. And then um, modeling that for my team and for my colleagues, that it's okay for all of us to adapt that attitude and still be able to deliver excellence. You can do both.
I love that. What would your advice be to someone who right now might be facing a season of change and they're trying to do it all? Maybe they're not wanting to admit the change, and so they're busying themselves trying to maintain status quo amongst all of these different facets of their life, and they're unwilling to let go and meet reality where it's at. What would your first step of advice be?
Advice is so hard. It's such a scary word. Even I remember when I was a new mother, and now I'm an old mother, and I meet new mothers, how careful I am to try really hard not to give advice, but just to share some perspectives. The best thing is we're all unique, and the only thing that's truly going to work for you is what's going to work for you. But if you're able to put them all out there, for me, family, friends, my health, my job, what are your values? What do you connect with? What are the buckets, if you need to make a list, that you want to spend time in? And if you can make them as broad as possible. Okay, now what if one thing had to fall off or had to get a little less energy? Which one would you pick? Um, but get the support that you need. A lot of employers have employee assistance programs. They might help you work through this. So I think my best piece of advice would be trust a professional to help you work through this, whether it's a trusted colleague, a trusted friend, or taking advantage of an EAP. Understand the resources that are out there, because you're going to burn yourself out.
Hmm.
Um, or you're going to project such an image of being able to do it all. You're just going to get more and more on your plate, and no one's going to realize that you're trying to ask for help because you don't know how to ask for help. So I guess that's my other piece of advice is it's okay to ask for help. Once you start outsourcing a little bit, if you're really bad at it, like I was, once you embrace it, suddenly you can get really good at it and realize it's okay to ask for help.
I wish I could have heard those words from you about 6
Oh,
or 7 years ago. I was
I
definitely
wouldn't have had them. I wouldn't have
well,
had them. I wouldn't have been taking my
exactly.
own advice.
Yeah, and that's the journey that we're all on, right? And,
Yeah.
I probably had been given that advice, but I wasn't ready to hear it, and sometimes we need to learn our own lessons, but I certainly projected that image of being able to do it all, and was spinning all these plates, so I kept getting more plates, and then,
Yeah.
it got to this crashing point where I was desperate to not let anything drop and break, but just really hanging on by a thread. And then I didn't know how to say no. I wanted to prove myself, even talking last night about this podcast. I was
Mhm.
saying when I first met you, I was terrified of you.
Oh
and
my gosh.
and now we're
Please, anybody who
great
hears that,
friends.
do not ever be terrified of me.
Right. And I'd laugh at it because it's so silly now, right? All it took was me having a conversation with you to, all of those things went out the window. But I was a lot younger. I wanted to impress you or prove myself, and a lot of things that a lot of young professionals will have.
Yeah.
And then we start to realize that those are just stories. And
Stories we tell ourselves. Exactly.
exactly,
Why do we tell ourselves these stories? I
yeah,
have this conversation with my teenager just last night and this morning. Story, he was telling himself about, a team situation. And I'm like, well, are you just telling yourself that story, or is it fact? Go and learn some more, find out some more,
yes,
and let's talk about it some more. Um, yeah, I I'm still laughing that you were terrified of me.
Same.
I'm such an admirer of the change agent that you are, and
Thank
it's
you.
just been a privilege since I did get to meet you a few years ago to watch you grow and follow some energy. It's certainly been inspiring to me, and I
Thank
think to a lot of others. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And thank you for that reflection. It's again, a lot of times, we as human beings who are facing something this close to our face, and we can't see the detail clearly, and we're afraid to take a step back. And once we do, we get more perspective. I had a coach once explain it to me like being in a house, right? If you're on the ground floor and you look down, from the front door, you can only see so far to the right and left down the street. But as you go up to the second floor and the third floor, maybe on the roof,
Mhm.
you get more perspective. You can see more. You have more awareness of when things are coming instead of it being a total surprise. And I thought that was a really great reframe. And so it's awesome to be able to reflect on our own journeys and see that growth. And a great practice, talking about stories, is to, when you list out your beliefs about something or whatever's on your mind, and then asking yourself, is this true? And
Right.
and then whenever another thought comes up, is that true? Can you be absolutely sure? Or is there another alternative? And just exploring those possibilities starts to open up your mind and to realize that not every thought you have is true. Certainly it's not fact, right? It's your subjective
No.
reality. And so we have the power to change our language. And when we change our language and our story, then our experience will change as well.
So again, like these are, it feels like you and I have been having this conversation, but it sounds like you've been having it in your head and I've been having it in my head. But I feel like, wait, have you been reading my mind? One thing I repeat to myself pretty often is I get to do hard things.
Mm,
I actually started my day with that today because I felt like I had a couple hard things on my docket today, and but I get to do them. I get to choose to get out of my comfort zone. That's something I have tried to embrace the last few years.
mm,
Um, it's a privilege to be able to embrace fear. It's not fun. It's not
mm.
easy. Sometimes when I go for a run, depending on the weather, sometimes it's the weather, convincing myself in a really cold, cold day or a rainy day,
Yeah,
how am I going to start this run? And I will be all geared up and I'll be at the bottom of my driveway and I'll just pace because I'm not ready just to start.
yeah.
Just not ready to start. I'm still trying to convince myself, go back and get in that warm bed. And then all it takes is that first step, that decision to cross the threshold of my driveway and hit the pavement. And then once I've kind of kicked myself out of the driveway, a different gear takes over and you're in it. And what you were worried about, it's behind you now because you took that
Mm,
first step. And um, I don't think we like doing hard things. I don't think we're made to get out of our comfort zones. I don't think we're made to embrace fear. But it's taught me so much more than playing it safe and staying comfortable. And I really truly recognize that's a gift, and that's a gift I try to share with my kids. And then at some point, you're just mom. I might have better luck convincing a young professional in our industry why that could be wise.
yes.
Try telling it to a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, maybe not at all.
Yeah.
But trying to lead by example and hoping that others will, kind of take those big scary steps too. There can be really something cool on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly when it's coming from a parent, we all roll our eyes and say, "What do you
Yeah.
know?" And then maybe 10, 15 years later, you're like, "Well, actually you did know." Um,
I
but
remember making that call to my dad. I want to say, I know I was either, it was somewhere between being 23 and 25, but I had this clarity. We didn't have cell phones back then, I'm sure. Um, but I was somewhere and just a light bulb went over my head. I just realized all these things he was trying to tell me in college, right out of college. He was so right. And I just had this need to get to a phone quickly
and to
and
tell him.
call and tell him that. Like, just want to let you know you were right. All these things, they're literally unfolding in front of me. And it's like, hey, dad was right. Dad was right. Dad was right. And I thought he deserved to know that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'll get that call one day. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Or if my
absolutely.
husband does, yeah,
Yeah.
then I'll
See
be
who gets it
jealous. But
first.
yeah, exactly. We're a little competitive in this household too. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
So
in competition, helps us strive towards progress and getting a little bit better. But certainly it's a practice, right? It's a choice. I love
Yeah.
the phrase, I get to do hard things. And even just saying I get to, I get to pay my taxes, right? I get to pay my bills. It
Yeah.
sounds awful and you don't necessarily like it, but it affords you the lifestyle that you have. It means that
Mhm.
you have a job. It means that you're making money, right? There's a lot of ways that you can reframe that. And when we reframe into a positive, then our experience shifts, that perspective. You start to find other things that are positive, and you find the silver lining even in really hard situations. And you can make hard things like running or a Spartan race or weightlifting or whatever competition thing that you like to do. It's like second tier fun. It sucks in the moment, but you embrace it, and
Right.
on the other
Yeah.
side you can have that endorphin rush and feel really accomplished.
Well, and I do want to clarify. I mean, some hard things happen to us.
Yes.
And I don't want to minimize or diminish those. So when I say I get to do hard things, those are about the things where I know I have a choice. And I think, do you really get to complain about this? Like, this is what you wanted, or this is
Right.
what you decided you wanted. This is what you committed to. So where you have a choice, now you may as well reframe it and say, well, I get to do hard things. Not,
Yeah.
I can't believe I agreed to this, or this is going to stink, or this is the worst thing ever. No, you had a choice. You made this choice. So now I get to do hard things. I decided I was, going to try to qualify for Boston. I still haven't, but I can try, right? But I get to do hard things. And anytime my husband would love for me to say, and we're done. We're done. No more of that. No more chasing, but I get to do it right now, and I'm grateful for it. Now the caregiving, with my parents, they did not ask for this, and you know, watching them suffer and knowing the role that I've and my sister that that we've had to put ourselves in, or we were put in with them. There was no choice there,
Mm,
or if there was, I mean, it's not a choice I ever would have made, of course, to not be there for them. But it's a little harder to say I get to do hard things because I don't want to do these things. That is a
right,
whole different reality. But if not me, then who? And so
right.
sometimes that's the reframe. Um, but I am a big believer in reframing. You can take what's happening to you or a choice you've made and then try to figure out, well, how can I put something in there that I can repeat to myself that's going to help me get to the other side if there is another side to it.
Absolutely. And even when things do happen to us, we can find, new aspects of ourselves, new ways of
Yeah.
being. We find that we can change how we relate to things, how we relate to illness, how we relate to relationship, to our parents, to what we thought we wanted in life, what we thought was important. We can reevaluate our value systems. And if we iterate on a regular basis, then we are not shaken so hard when some of these things take place. And so it's a beautiful reminder that life is messy,
Mhm.
and it's also full of wonder at the same time.
Yeah, there's no script. There's no script. It's really interesting to know that we've got a lot of choice to make every day. When you wake up, how are you going to let the day take you, or how are you going to control where the day takes you? Sometimes we have control over that, sometimes we don't. But I was talking to a young person this morning who's looking at making a pretty decent life change, and this was a little earlier before our call today. And I said to her, You're not going to go wrong here following what's important to you right now. You might not get all the outcomes you want, might lead you to a different decision, a different direction. But if you also know this is a path to happiness because this is important to you, I don't think a year from now you're going to look back and say, that was a really bad choice I made, because it's probably going to unlock a few other things for you that you can't even imagine right now.
Right.
Um, and that's what business aviation is too. I mean, I know we talk to people all the time who say, I'm in this career and I love it, but it wasn't intentional. It was accidental. I'm accidentally a business aviation professional. Me too.
Yes. Same.
Um, how we can be more intentional in getting people to choose this as a career path, to understand it more. I'd love to hear less accidental stories, more intentional stories, but also the beauty that in this career path, not scripted. I cannot hand you a linear path and say, well, you're going to follow this. And when you're a certain age, you're going to retire and you're going to say, I followed that track. Exactly. That's, I think, something we all have in common in this industry is every path is unique. There's not a lot of pre-scripted ways that you're going to find yourself having a journey if you choose this space to build your career in.
Yeah, well said. And I think in today's world with technology, with the advancement of things like AI and where we're at, that's the script and the linear paths are really going out the window for many
Mhm.
industries.
Yeah.
Everything is shifting and evolving, and every year it's more rapid, right? We've seen a lot of regulation change in the industry. We've seen new technologies come on board, and then that spurs new businesses. And
Yes.
you get the opportunity to forge your own path, and so having that mindset is really
Mhm.
powerful no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what you said to that young woman is so true because sometimes we like the idea of a thing or we think that's where we wanna go, and then in the process of getting there, we realize that's not quite it, but we now have opened up new perspectives, new ideas, we've experienced new things, and then that allows us to pivot and find
Mhm.
the new direction that we're gonna go, and sometimes that's only 1 degree off, sometimes it's a complete 180, and that's okay, and it doesn't have to follow, what you originally thought. You get to change if you want to.
You do, and I think that's a responsibility that I have as someone who's been in this industry for a long time to make sure that's the impression we make on people who are considering this industry. The same for people who are already here, who are trying to figure out their next step in professional development or their next career move. I want to make sure that there's a way I can help them think about that in a again a nonlinear fashion. I also wear that hat as a parent. Both of my kids are pursuing aviation as a career path. And what's interesting is I think I can tell them what their first 5 years in the aviation industry might look like. Maybe their first 10 years could look like. I have no idea what their careers might look like 15 years and on. And that is so intriguing to me that the youth today, regardless of what industry they're choosing, the one that they enter is going to start looking wildly different pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And to your point, with technology advancing so rapidly, it's going to keep changing very quickly. It's not going to settle in again and then spike. I think it's going to be just a climb, a different level every year to the next level. So, as an observer of this, I can't wait to see. And I don't want to be too punny here, how their careers take off, but they did choose aviation.
Oh, you get to be so
Um,
funny. I love puns.
yeah, it's gonna be like really really exciting for me. And then it's also really important to think about what should you be studying now? If you still are in a formal education environment or you have the chance to take some professional development or take advantage of professional education, again, what would get you out of your comfort zone? What are the spaces that you could become the expert in because you're seeing the trends and you're seeing where we're going? And people are going to look to find some thought leaders in that area or some experts in that area. You got to start somewhere. So it's a pretty ripe time to think, hey, I might want to make a left turn and there's a lot of clues out there that might guide you in something that takes you towards artificial intelligence, sustainability, advanced air mobility, and a number of other things that if they intrigue you, you've got time to become one of the experts in your field.
Absolutely. And I really like to remind people that change is good. It's a good thing. And it doesn't have to be scary. We can reframe our mindset. Anxiety and excitement are on just two different sides
Cousins.
of the line,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we can embrace the change, we can all become pivoters, right? We have the mindset of, okay, well, how do I adapt to this and what feels good, right? Which direction am I going to go? And even my career, I've been in aviation now
Mhm.
20 years, which is like really weird to say. I'm like, when did that happen? Um, but 15 years in biz av or 16 years, and it's just like you could not have told me when I first started that I'd be here. I wouldn't have believed you.
Right. Sure.
Even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. Things, even a year, so much can change in just 6 months to a year. And it's just a continual process of, you know, finding out what works for you and aligning to your values, and then, pointing your nose in the direction that you want to go. And, like hand flying an airplane, making those micro adjustments along the way so that you get towards the destination that you desire going to.
Oh, it's beautiful the way you said that. And I think value alignment is so important.
Yes. And this is why
The
working with a coach is so important, because they can
Well,
help you with that.
that's exactly. So, and working with a coach, and I know I was on a webinar, I think it was just a week ago,
Yes.
with some great people talking about coaching and why taking advantage of coaching, or do coaches have coaches? Yes. Um, how does that keep you always doing reflection, self-reflection? And one of the important parts of that journey is understanding and knowing your own values,
Yes.
um, bringing your values with you wherever you go. You really want, for me, it's really important. What you see is what you get. Who you see is who you get.
Yes.
Um, and then also aligning your values with your employer or the people that you're spending time with. I mean, I truly know how fortunate I am. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm an NBAA-er. I bleed the NBA blue. I love it here. But I also truly believe in our values, a culture of care, promoting community, leading from any seat, and delivering excellence. And every day I can look at a colleague, one of our volunteer leaders, one of our members, and I can come up with examples in all four of those buckets. And that tells me those things are important to me as a human. They're important to my organization. If you're one of our members or one of our volunteers or one of our employees, hopefully you feel that those values connect with you too. And I can't imagine, although like I said, I've been here a pretty long time, I can't imagine what it would be like to work for an employer where my values did not align. But I don't think I would be there very long, because that just physically, I feel like that would just be the weight. My shoulders would be
Yeah.
down here. And I don't think you'd see on my face the passion I have for certain things. And I understand that's the reality for some people. And I'm not talking anybody out of leaving their jobs here. I cannot pay your bills for you. Do not make a change based on this lounge discussion. But it's a time to think about, could a coach help me figure out how I can get to better value alignment,
Yes.
how I want to react to my reality. And if there is something out there for me, what's a responsible way to go about it? Getting back to, we have some choice here.
Yes. Well said. And, working with a coach will also help identify those values that you say you want, but maybe don't exhibit. You're not really actioning them in your life. Maybe they're not really your
Mm,
values. Maybe they were ones you
right.
adopted from society or your parents, or they were the values you kind of arbitrarily picked the last time you maybe did an exercise in school. I think the younger generation is starting to do this in school now. I certainly never did.
Yeah.
And not just saying like a throwaway, like, oh, family, my career, getting really, really
Yeah.
specific and naming, well, what does that look like? And how do you know when those values are being met? And what happens when they're not met? And
Hmm.
then really getting granular with it, because then you know how to action them. I think a large part of why relationships, whether that's a business partnership, an employer employee relationship, a friend relationship, or romantic relationship, fail is because both parties or one party does not have clarity on what those things are. And
Yeah.
so they enter into a relationship where there's maybe unspoken agreements, and they get irritated when those things are not met, yet they can't articulate it. They don't have the skill set or tools to do that. And so working with a coach is going to help you be able to name those things very clearly, which can then help you make better choices and be intentional with where you take your career and how you show up in the world.
I loved where you use the word articulate. Articulation, that is an art.
Yes.
It can be learned. Everybody has it within themselves to understand what their values are, to wear them on their sleeve, to be able to give voice to them. I know when I first started out, I don't know if they use this phrase anymore, But, do you have your 30-second elevator speech? If
Yeah.
you're, stuck in the elevator with somebody, in 30 seconds, you have to sell them on your brand or your value or your pitch or your idea or who you are. How are you going to use that time? But I do think that those are the words that we have to have at the ready. If we find ourselves in a conversation where we can see our values could be compromised, or our integrity, or our reputation, or somebody else's, how are you showing up in those moments? And I do think everything comes down to communication, and it's
Yes.
either, hesitancy to communicate, making assumptions, not being honest in the communication. But I feel like almost every challenge, or I hate to use, not a problem, but things that I'm asked to partner on or solve, a lot of times I can find, okay, that root cause is some communication breakdown.
Yes.
And if we could just create some better communication strategies and skill sets, I bet we wouldn't find this challenge as challenging as it is. And then again, I hate to simplify things. It's not like there's just some, magic wand that you wave. You're better communicators, and look, challenges have gone away. But we can get to a better place when we can have these types of authentic dialogues.
Absolutely. Yeah, Crucial Conversations is a book that really helped me, and I used it with my teams in Asia Pacific, and it really, especially cross-culturally, helped people to connect more and find that shared pool of meaning and be able to get out of the stories, right? Again, it's back to the stories we tell ourselves and
Yeah,
the assumptions we make, because when we assume, that's where a lot of things
we
go
all
wrong.
know. Yeah,
We all know
yeah.
what that means. You're
Yes, we
like a
do.
donkey. I'm just remembering Michael Port's story, where he
Yeah.
talks about the old
Mhm.
man and the boy, and then you can kiss your ass goodbye.
Yeah,
So
that was, yeah, he's got some good stories.
he definitely does. And stories can be used for good, right? And so we get to
Mhm.
choose how we write those stories and how we articulate those to other people, and what meaning
Yeah,
we give to them. That's what humans do. We're meaning making machines. But
that's right.
yeah. So with in line with working with a coach, right? Coaches obviously help us find our values. They help us give the reflection back that's objective to guide us on our journey. Um, and then we often in turn take what we learn from our coaches and we give them back to our teams, or we mentor, or we volunteer at a school, and
Mhm.
we transfer that knowledge in a different way. And we're also obviously adding our own flavor and nuance to that. I'm curious to know what your experience with being a volunteer in the industry has done for
Yeah,
you, and how that's impacted your leadership, your personal self-wellness, and what the benefits of that are, because obviously it's extra effort and work and time
it
and energy,
is.
but there's a huge benefit to it. So I would love to hear more about your journey with volunteering.
Well, I'm so passionate about volunteerism, and I'm sure there are people either with us today or who are going to listen to this later. If you are a volunteer and you haven't been thanked recently, please take my thank you, my appreciation. I don't think volunteers receive enough recognition, enough thanks. I know that's not why you're volunteering. You're not doing it for the accolades, but I also know that volunteers can be really unsung. And the best thing you can do is let a volunteer know that you see them, you see their
Mm,
contributions, you appreciate them. You couldn't do it without them. Um, I live in a household where when I go off to a meeting, like tonight is back to school night, my very last back to school night with a senior in high school. And my husband still said to me before he left for his last trip, volunteer for nothing. Volunteer for nothing, because I have a habit of like, oh, I could do that. I could help with that.
yeah,
What is it with busy people and volunteering? But that's the thing, is if you are a volunteer, it's probably part of your DNA. And it's really hard to not realize that, hey, I can roll up my sleeves. I could be really helpful here. And then we get back to the burnout and the other conversation we had earlier. But I'll say from an NBAA standpoint, we're a very small organization. There's about 70 employees at NBAA. But when you think about all of the things that NBAA does, we do that because we have over 600 volunteers.
amazing.
And there's 17 standing committees. There are conferences and conventions and forums that have incredible speakers who give their time. There are subject matter experts. Schedulers has ambassadors that will help you navigate the conference. We have people who sign up to be your first time attendee buddy. That's a volunteer job. I want to be your buddy, and I'm going to help you navigate this conference. Ask me. I'm going to help you know which room you need to go to or which direction or how you can get CAM credit for this. Ask me. I love talking about this topic. I can be a speaker here, or I can work the mic and help with Q&A, but people just want to give back in that way. And if you haven't heard it recently, especially if you're an NBA volunteer, we thank you. I hope there's something in it for you. So people, and we talked about this earlier, only have so much time in the day, week, month, year. And the fact that they say, I have a little bit more of a deposit I can make. I have X amount of hours, but I have choice. I could, again, I could coach, my nephew's soccer team. I could be a leader for my daughter's Girl Scout troop. I could give my time to my church and decide that's where I'm spending my volunteer time. Or I could volunteer in my industry, but we realize there's not enough of you to probably go and do all of those things and don't do them well. So if you give of your volunteer time and you've made that deposit, like in the industry, for example, I hope you're getting back from it as well, even if that's not your reason. Maybe in your role, in your professional paid role, you don't get a lot of leadership opportunities, and that's a skill set that you would like to improve. Okay, well, being a volunteer and taking on some leadership responsibilities there might shore you up and give you some of those skills you need that translate into advancing in your job or getting that promotion you're looking for. Maybe you want to manage some more projects. Well, a lot of volunteering is project management. So again, we're not going to let you fail. So volunteering is a great place to try and learn and know that you've got a nice safety net of people there for you. But if it translates back into something for you in your professional paid life, that's great. Sometimes you feel alone. I know a number of our flight departments. What do? You go to the airport, you get into your secure gate, you park in your secure parking lot, you go into your secure office, and the people you interact with are the people who had that same access. And there could be another vibrant flight department 2 hangers over who you never get to engage with. But when you start volunteering, you might build some community that might come out of being part of a regional group or joining a community of schedulers and dispatchers, for example. And your world has gotten a little bit bigger and you're a little less alone. So there's just a number of ways I think volunteerism not only helps the organization where you're volunteering, but helps you as a person for what it is that you're seeking or is missing in your life that can fill in some of those blanks. Otherwise, I don't think the volunteers would keep doing it.
Yeah.
Or I think they would sort of vote with their feet and
Right.
say, this is not worth my deposit here. It actually is better for me to take my limited amount of time and resources and spend that over here.
Yes.
So huge fan of volunteers. And if you are a volunteer and you're not getting everything you want out of it, then you should speak up and make it clear, because that could be the one thing is don't assume, as we talked about this a little earlier, don't assume that somebody understands your why for volunteering.
Right.
You need to sometimes put yourself forward and let them know why you're volunteering or what you hope to gain from this as well. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that's just a matter of using your voice. And then somebody will be like, oh, perfect. We didn't even know you were interested in maybe ascending to a leadership role or that you wanted to try to manage an event. We would love for that for you.
Yes.
But don't assume they know how to use you and your talents and skills the best.
Absolutely. And don't assume that they can maybe even recognize that there's a disconnect somewhere, because often
Right.
with volunteer work comes pressures because your paid role or your family life or something else is really demanding. And so you kind of have to disengage. And maybe you feel guilty about disengaging. So you disengage more. And then it creates frustration and there's not good communication back and forth. So keeping that open line of communication is also really crucial, because sometimes the leaders and volunteer positions are not aware of what's happening in your world. And so by speaking up and using your voice, not only can you bridge that gap, but like you said, you can start to better um, claim the things that you're seeking. And if it's not available or if it's not possible, then you have the opportunity to put your time into another thing. And another great thing about volunteering is that you get to try on new roles and new
Mhm.
places with a lot less risk. So, for example, if you're thinking about a career move into a new industry, you can go volunteer for the association in that industry or volunteer for an event and start to meet people and talk about what is it like to work here in this industry, and what could I look forward to? What other events should I look at? And you can start to learn that way, and also meet some really amazing people. Maybe there's some community events, and you volunteer, and all of a sudden discover you have this passion for like cross stitch or like water
Yeah.
polo or whatever it is, right? And you would have never sought that out yourself, but because it was part of this fair that you volunteered at, you had exposure, and then that activated something in you. I mean, that's why we love things like Girls in Aviation Day or aviation fairs, because the people that are coming, sometimes it's the parents bringing the child, and now the parents are getting excited. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's the other way around, right? And so it's really fun to put yourself in new experiences and see what activates you.
By the way, good plug for Girls in Aviation Day, which is happening most places around
In
the
2 days.
country on Saturday, September 21st. Find your local Girls in Aviation Day. I bet there's one in your state or in your county or at your local airport. If not, maybe ask yourself, how could I help support one next year?
Exactly.
But more women in aviation, more information would be at Women in Aviation, WAI.org.
Yes,
But I know NBAA staffers will be supporting in Winchester this weekend. It's exciting.
it is.
I did want to mention you talked about volunteerism. And I do spend a lot of time with volunteers. I also understand the flip side is volunteer guilt is real.
Yeah.
You've signed up for something and suddenly your life has gone in a direction you hadn't anticipated when you took on a bigger role. Trust me when I say people want to help you make a graceful exit or take some things off of your plate if you're volunteer. Again, they might be telling you the story they might be telling themselves is this person signed up and they just don't care. And, we never see them at meetings. And the thing is, they may not realize there's been a big change in your life. Maybe you've had an employment change. Maybe you've, welcomed a new child or said goodbye to a loved one or had a huge move. There could be so many different things and illness. But if you're not able to communicate that and say, hey, I know I committed to this, but I need a little less on my plate, you'll be respected for it. They'll understand. They can recover for it. But you don't have to carry around this volunteer guilt. Nobody's shoulders, again, are looking for more weights to weigh them down. It's a story you're telling yourself that you're letting people down. Instead, the story, let people help you. And if you're able to be open with them that the commitment you took on is just not possible now, transparency is probably going to go a lot further and make that a good experience for everybody, even if it's an exit or a temporary halt. And I've seen that happen many times over the last couple decades. And my goal is, how can we make this graceful for you? This is not a failure.
Absolutely.
But things have changed, and we want to help you embrace that change without all this guilt or thinking that you're being judged for it.
Thank you for highlighting that, because that's a very important part of the process. And, again, back to communication and being able to articulate what are your needs, and, how you want to still be involved, and what can you do? What can you support? It's so, so powerful. And, we have so many people commenting and talking about, the things that they're volunteering for. Girls in Aviation Day, I'm just going to do a little shameless plug. Austin,
Mhm.
you can go to Atlantic Aviation. Sarah Went with STX-BAA and Women in Aviation here is running that. Emily White in San Antonio, and Maho
Yeah.
down in Houston. So we've got representation from our volunteer association, the South Texas Business Aviation Association, to go and be a part of that. It's so much fun. It's just fun to watch little kids light up, and it reactivates you if you have
Yeah.
a passion
Whoops.
for aviation. And it's really a joyful experience. And like I said, the parents get excited, and then you get to talk to them about opportunities. And so no matter what industry that is for you, whether you're an aviation nerd like us or you're an aerospace geek, there's something out there that you can go and visit and see and learn from and,
Yes.
and be exposed to. So go check out what opportunities are in your neighborhood. And if you
Yeah.
have any questions about aviation or NBAA, I'm sure Joe will be very happy to help you.
Always excited to talk about this. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. All right, Joe, before we wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions that I like to ask all of my guests. And
Okay.
so the first one is, what is your superpower?
Hmm. Let's see. If you ask my kids, they would tell you, how does mom always know everything? So somehow my
Every mom
superpower
is.
is, believe me, I see everything. You don't know that I see and hear everything, but I do. I'm just discreet enough to not let everybody know I see and hear everything. Um, But let's see, for me, I mean, it's hopefully people will agree. I love connecting good humans with each other, or trying to connect great ideas. I get excited about things people are excited about. I'm not always the right person, but sometimes I feel like I'm a good connector.
Mm,
And if that leads to some really cool things happening, then I'm gonna take that as my superpower.
yes. Yeah, there's, being a super connector is a real thing, and, you definitely are great at that. I've experienced the connecting from you, many times, so
It's
thank you.
fun. How fun is it to introduce 2 people or multiple people that you think are,
Yes.
"Wow, you wait till I get you on a phone with each other or in a room with each other. You're just gonna feed off each other, and then I'm gonna step back and I'm just gonna watch some magic happen."
Yes.
That's as cool as being one of the people in the conversation, is kinda like curating that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always my ask every time I'm, on a call with someone that or I meet someone new and they sometimes you get the question, "How can I help you?" And my answer and ask is always, when we hang up, if you experience something, whether it's a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and you think of me, send me a message. Let me know what it was. Or if you're with someone and I pop into your head, I'd love to meet them. There's probably a reason you thought of me when you were with them. And,
Yeah.
I love doing that too. As soon as I think of
You're very good at
someone,
that.
I'm just like, okay, you guys have to meet. And it is fun to
Yeah.
watch those sparks fly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an
Amazing.
excitable thing.
All right. My second question is around, how we ask for help and how we change the stories that we might tell ourselves. And so the question is, who's on your personal board of directors? Meaning, who in your life do you turn to, whether you actually speak to them or you just kind of adopt their perspective when you're navigating decisions in your life or things that you're doing?
Mhm.
And these can be people that are real, fictional characters from the
Mm.
past in your life, someone you've never met before. But do you have a kind of a
I
set board? Do
do.
you have various people you go to? I'd love to know.
Yeah, they're all real people. I might play around with that question later because that's really fun.
Yeah.
Who would be my fictional board of directors? It's certainly my husband. He's in aviation. He was in business aviation for a little while. He probably knows me the best if it's a professional decision, because I've known him since we were in college, and so that's a long history of just
Yeah.
somebody who's got that longevity of knowing me as a professional. And now that my kids are older, believe me when I say, like, their perspectives are really important to me. The questions
Mhm.
they might ask are extremely helpful. So I'm going to say, my 17-year-old, my almost 20-year-old, but then, and of course, I have some trusted NBA colleagues that I've worked with for so long. They're like family. But this really unique thing, and this goes back to volunteerism and coaching and caregiving and everything else, is in 2004,
Okay.
I became the staff liaison to the schedulers and dispatchers committee. And I was very young. I was pregnant with my first child. I was, you know, 3 years at NBAA, so pretty low on the rung as well in terms of time and tenure there. And I got to know this group of women who we just all instantly had that connection with each other, because there was something we had in common with each other, even if all 10 of us didn't have the same thing in common. There was one thing that just helped us create a connection with each other. We have
Yeah.
a silly little name for ourselves and some other silliness that I won't get into, but they know who they are. But I will say each person on that circle, now more than 20 years, or I guess it's our 20-year anniversary now, there's the person on there who's the cheerleader. Okay, so I know if I'm
Yep.
looking for that kind of opinion or
You're gonna go
perspective, I'm
there.
going to the cheerleader.
Yeah.
There's the person who holds up the mirror. You need that person on your team. So if I don't want the answer that I'm going to get, but I know I need it, who's the person that's going to hold up the mirror? There's the realist, who's
Mm.
going to take my unbridled enthusiasm for a shiny new object and help bring me down, to a better altitude where the oxygen is more breathable and they can get me to see straight again.
Yes.
But it's interesting, and I can't go through all of them, but there's something I get from each of them, and I
Yeah.
hope that they would be able to say what they get from me. But it would be pretty hard to make a big move, or big life change without knowing that those people were somehow influential in helping me reframe or reflect before making
Mm.
that decision. And I've been grateful for all of those people for decades now.
Amazing. I love that. Yes, we need all those different perspectives because we need things at different times. And so I loved your analogy of, like, let's just come down, get some more oxygen into the brain and like see straight again because we definitely all need that person.
Yeah.
But it's so great that you can clearly identify who those people are. And that's why this exercise is so powerful. And I've had so many interesting answers. Sometimes people have come back and said, "Oh, I have like an avatar that I have created that I kind of run a filter through," or this person was really influential as I was growing up, and I follow their writing, and so that's someone I also kind of turn to. So it's really great to
Mhm.
kind of analyze yourself and see what are those inputs that you're choosing
Yeah.
and how does that affect who you are. And the best part is if you are choosing someone that is not in your immediate circle, or even if you don't talk to them, right, you just think of that person who brings you back down from cloud nine, or that person who's going to cheer you on. You're running it through their filter, but you're still coming it up with the answer yourself, and so you are basically self-guiding and self-coaching. And
I think that's true. I think that's true.
yeah,
It's so helpful to the key is you have to be honest with that board of directors. You can't hold
yes,
back.
no,
And that is probably what I would tell people when you're thinking about who your board of directors are. Can you truly say all the things to those people so that they can get the full picture
right.
and help you reflect back? Otherwise, it's not worth it, or the relationship isn't as deep as you think, because there's always going to be something missing from that conversation. And I'll say, really, the wisest person these days is my 17-year-old, and I mean that with all compliments. I just am so enjoying the human he's becoming, and the conversations that he wants to have with me. And he is the first person, because he's usually here on property with me more than my husband, who's flying a lot. First thing in the morning, "Hi, Mom, how'd you sleep?" And he wants the real answer. If I had a wacky dream or I woke up with a big idea, he's gonna like eat his oatmeal and listen to me. And then I want to hear about his day as soon as I see him. But he's so quick to change the conversation. "Well, how was your day? How was work?
Right, to
How
turn
was
it
that
around.
thing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wait, buddy, I still want to hear about you." "No, no, I want to hear about you." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, you're not, what is this?" But
Yeah.
I am excited to see how our relationship is going to evolve as he, turns from teenager to, 20 something, or et cetera, because I can see how powerful he's going to be on that board of directors.
Mhm.
And then I hope he'll want to include me on his one day.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. My final question is a self-awareness question, and it is, how do you best represent humanity? And this is from the perspective that another intelligent life form has come to Earth, and the first human that they meet is you, Joe. So what do they learn about humanity as a result?
Oh, I knew you were going to tie extraterrestrials into this. You couldn't be you
Hey,
without
right? I'm just,
this
I always
kind
got
of an
insert
end
Station.
question. Um, oh, I love that. Actually, listen, I always say, like, I'm just who I am is who I am, and I'm always a mom first. It's just who you
Mm,
get with me. The rule in our house, we've got some key pieces of advice, and I expect people in my crew to model them, and I expect myself to uphold them too. None of us are
mm,
perfect. Always be kind.
mm.
I truly believe that it's got to be easier to be kind than to be the opposite. So always be kind. Make good choices. Parentheses, don't do stupid blank. But we say that in our house all the time. We have a very good friend on that board of directors who's known for telling us, make good choices. And I've adopted that too. But I also then, in parentheses for my kids, and don't do stupid blank.
Yes.
And it may or may not be embroidered on a pillow somewhere in a dorm on a college campus. But it's true. If you're not doing stupid blank, you're probably making good choices. So those are the things that I hope people get from me. And that I hope someone would. Oh, and there's one of those kids. The only people who get emergency bypass are my two kids. So um, yeah, I think that and call your mother. That would be my other piece of
That's another
advice.
one. Yes, call your mother so that
If
you
you
have
have a
to
mom to
learn.
call your mom. That's my kid in North Dakota checking in. It's who sends the first text of the day. But I respect the time zone, so he got me first. So it'll be fun after this to see what's coming from that part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you would inspire these intelligent life forms to call their maternal lineage, should they have one.
Yeah,
If
and
that's not a
it's so much
custom.
more than, maybe not call your mother. I realize that we don't all have that privilege either, including me. But who's that person on the other side of the relationship that you haven't checked in with recently? Call
Yeah.
that person. Doesn't that make a difference?
Yeah.
That human connection, that's important. So I would tell that to this being.
Yes, I love it. All right, so everyone's call to action today is to think of someone that you care about deeply that you haven't connected with for a while, and just pick up the phone and call them. Don't text them, don't email and say,
Right.
"Hey, are you
Yeah.
free?" Just call them, and if they don't answer, leave them a really sweet voicemail. It's gonna make their day.
Right. Isn't that so nice? And then they'll probably save that voicemail. You won't know that. If you ever get my inbox and it says my voicemails are full, is
Yeah,
because I haven't exported the ones that I want to save for the rest of my life because they're that
I know.
meaningful to me. The power of a good voicemail.
It is powerful, and it's different than a voice note because sometimes we ramble on those, voicemails cut you off, and it's the fact that, "Oh, they called me and they really wanted to talk to me at that moment and say this thing." And so
Yeah.
maybe that's us being old school because, I still remember push phones and the rotary phone, but, for
Yeah.
the Gen Zers, send your voice note, send your video. That
Right.
will also
And
be
the almost 20-year-old, I had to peek at his text. It says, "I love you!" exclamation point. And
good.
that's it.
Oh, I love
So he
that.
got me first. It's who sends the first one over. But he got me first today.
Amazing. Well, that's a beautiful spot to end this, Joe. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It's been a joy as always. If people would like to reach
Same
out to
here.
you or connect, where can they find you?
Hey, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I think this medium tells you how to do that.
Yes.
You can also email me, jdamato@nba.org. If you drop me a message in LinkedIn, I'll see it when I see it, and I'll be happy to reply. But then also feel free to direct something to my inbox because there's a better chance of getting a reply if it's in the email. But
Amazing.
and then also, hey, I hope I see you in person. So for
Yes.
everybody on here, for you, Sarah. So if you're going to be at NBAA base, walk up to me. I'm not terrifying.
She's not, I promise.
And hi, I'm so and so. I saw you on the lounge or wherever, but I love face-to-face in-person interaction. So I would just love to meet any and all people. If you're going to be in Las Vegas, I hope you can find me and that we get a chance to say hello to each other.
Absolutely. Thank you for raising that. That's October 22nd through 24th. So if you're going to be there, definitely come and seek us out. And I will definitely, you'll be one of the first people, Joe, that I go and find for sure.
I know you'll be one. You'll be one of those too. And if you're everybody, get excited about it. Everybody's going to be there, and for me, it's a huge reunion. And it's so hard to move more than 5 feet forward because you just get stopped by somebody that you're genuinely excited to see. They just haven't been in front of you in that way in a while. And so
Absolutely.
it's just such a cool reminds us that human connection we all need and how great it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to that. That's just a month away. Joe, thank you so much. I hope you have a
My
wonderful rest.
pleasure, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. For everyone else,
Bye.
we'll be back on the lounge next week with one of my guests from the Space Kind community, Inara Tabir. See you soon.